Hold on, wait. Hi. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Nom Watch Review, part of Nom Talk Network. I am super excited and also very nervous for multiple reasons, including Vanessa's facial expression because she is experiencing something right now.
Sorry, just a helicopter and a cop outside my house just said, "Do not leave your house." And then I heard the word fugitive. They
What?
are still they're still going.
Oh my
Well, it's
gosh.
a shame that we're not talking about The Fugitive, the movie today.
Can
Exactly.
I be closer to the center of my house?
Oh my
Is there a
gosh.
one-armed man outside?
Please, make sure you're safe before you start talking about the Dark Crystal, but I'm ready to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm just gonna
Oh my.
face my windows. A helicopter has been buzzing my house for an hour, and I thought nothing of it, except literally, as Stephanie was giving us the breakdown, I heard a loudspeaker outside, and they're just driving up and down and saying in English and Spanish not to leave our homes.
No.
Oh, you must
Okay.
live in L.A.
Well, yeah, true.
Yes,
All
I
right,
do.
well, let's get to the party.
I'm just gonna go get a heavy stick.
Oh no. Find protection. But okay, so on this show, we usually talk about the latest films or television shows or even a milestone film. In this case, we are talking about a milestone film that I've never seen before, so Bill's very familiar with where this is going to go. We are talking about The Dark Crystal. It is turning 40. Yeah, it's a doozy. I will absolutely say it's a doozy, but my name is Stephanie. I'm sorry. My brain's just been absolutely scattered today or lately. But today I am having some super safe pad thai and a melon creamy soda. Yum, yum, yum. But I am actually more interested in introducing our guests for the evening. So we'll start with a regular Bill. Bill from
Hey, everybody.
Nerdbot. Hi, how are you? What do you do? Tell the people.
I do a range of things, but I write mostly for Nerdbot, and you can find me online as BillRW3, and this evening drinking the regular Coke Zero. However, if we get nudged or sponsored to drink anything, I've got my little mini bottle of absinthe over here. And for Noms, we got some sweet and sour pork over here on the side.
Oh, that sounds phenomenal. All right, all right. And then we have two familiar faces for me. They were a part of many other projects, but I had the blessing to meet them at G4. These were the people that I was the subordinate to. Whatever. We're moving on. Let's say hello and
What do you
welcome.
mean insubordinate to? You're incredible.
I'm one of those people where I love not talking about myself. So hi Vanessa, how are you doing? Who are you? What do you do? What are you snacking on?
Hi, I'm Vanessa. I'm a writer and producer. Currently, I'm over at Game Grumps, but I used to be over at G4. I'm snacking on some leftover French fried onions from Thanksgiving because that was what I had at arm's reach. Some red wine, and I've got a big stick because the police speaker is getting louder.
That is not terrifying at all. At all.
It's echoing in English and Spanish. Do not leave your homes.
Well, good thing for you, you're on a podcast and you don't have to. You're busy.
Hey.
I can't wait to watch my kidnapping on live stream fails tomorrow.
I am currently on the Citizen app trying to figure out what's going on in your neighborhood. But since, like Bill said, this is LA, there are a number of crimes
It could be
happening.
anything.
I can't pinpoint
You
yours
know, the last time I was down in L.A. and was watching on TV a couple of car chases, I'm like, on the movies they're always much faster. Where in most of the times on TV down there, it's kind of like, and here he is going down, Sunset.
Yeah, it is. It is one of those things where the movies definitely make it look more exciting. However, there is that X factor, like the one that happened, maybe the one that you're referring to, was pretty exciting, where the guy started carjacking random people in the street, ended in a big crash. Everyone was okay, but there is that sort of like, I remember one of them passed right by my house, and I saw my house on the news, and for a second, I was famous.
Lucky.
Yeah.
That's-
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's not terrifying at all. But Kassem, I mean, I'm sure everybody knows who you are, but tell everyone who you are and what you're
Hi,
snacking on today.
yes, hi, I'm Kassem. I was also formerly employed at G4 TV. And I've been on the internet for a long time, and I'm currently snacking on the lesser evil no cheesiness popcorn. I've been getting into popcorn lately, and then this I find to be a nice healthy brand that's not too salty or too buttery. And for drinks, since I just had dinner, I'm washing it down with a water, a liquid death water, not sponsored.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm doing currently.
You sent me home with that popcorn the other day, and it's fantastic.
Yes, yeah, I was kind of wondering if you were gonna also pop up your popcorn out, but here we are. I'm
Wait,
glad.
let me get it.
She's transportable.
It's a good movie discussion snack.
Oh, I can give you all
Oh wow.
entry to my snack pantry.
Yum yum.
Mmm. She's
Well,
got
Eh,
I see the spam.
I got matching popcorn. Oh, it's figgy. You were supposed figgy pudding spam.
Mm-hmm.
oh my gosh, no.
You were supposed to
It
bring that
tastes
over
like
last
sin.
week, and you did not. And I think about it every day.
We
Round
still got
two.
10.
Round two. Yeah. Well, there's a lot of love in the chat. Everybody's really excited to see Daddy Cass and Mama Vanessa. We have our regulars, Q, and one of our other hosts, Heartless. They're in here. Can't wait to dive into this. They're already throwing in their ratings. So what we do right here, right now, is we rate what we think the movie is based off of popcorn buckets. 5 popcorn buckets being the absolute best movie in the entire planet.
Mm-hmm.
And there's even a giant red X for if anybody hates this movie and is just begrudgingly here. But, as you can see, nobody hates this movie. So let's go ahead and start with our popcorn ratings. I mean, personally, I gave it a 3 out of 5. 1, it's my first time ever seeing this movie. 2, this is a 40-year-old movie, and I had zero reference to any of it other than Jim Henson. And that's it. So, I mean, I've got a lot of things to say, but it's not fair to the film because again, I'm seeing it through my 2022 lens. So we'll get to that later. We'll get to that later.
Mm-hmm.
Bill, what would you rate this film out of 5 popcorn buckets?
I was really torn between a 3.5 and a 4, and I think right now I kind of settled in as a 3.5.
All right, cool. Kassem, what would you rate this movie?
Yeah, look, I I should go with my first instinct, which was a 4, and for a second did want to drop it down, but I'm sticking with 4. This movie does have a lot of nostalgia for me. I saw it as a kid, and I remember being kind of scared of it, and I've revisited it in the last year a couple times. One, because I was watching the Netflix series, so I wanted to go back and watch the movie before. And I think the movie really does hold up. I have my gripes about how dense it is and how sometimes it's very hard to follow kind of what's happening. But at its core, I like the story. I like how dark it was, and I like how much effort it was what was put into to make this movie. It especially if you watch some of these behind the scenes little documentaries and things about it, it is really, really impressive the amount of work that Jim Henson and co put into this. And I think arguably one of my favorite characters in a live action sort of a Muppet puppet movie are the Podlings. I'm a sucker for the Podlings. I think they're some of the cutest characters that I've seen in a Jim Henson property. So much so that I at one point got the main Podling with the spoon. I bought that for somebody as a gift. I remember opening it, and it was it's also made out of latex, and I was like, this is one of the cutest things. And I'm sorry I have to give it to someone because I really wanted to keep it. But I'm sticking with 4 tubs of popcorn, guys. Thank you.
Of course. And Vanessa?
So this was my first viewing as well. Although I have a bias to love anything that's puppetry. I love puppets. I love Jim Henson. I once went to the Jim Henson exhibit and I cried from beginning to end. I was a whole mess. And if you don't think you like puppet movies and you enjoy Terminator and Jurassic Park, you're wrong. You actually love puppet movies. Because those are puppets.
Mm-hmm.
I gave this a 4 because it is a feat of puppetry,
Mm-hmm.
and Fizzgig is literally the cutest thing I've ever seen in my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
Although when it comes to very high fantasy things, lore, and especially very like, as Cass really well put it, dense lore is tough for me. It tends to go over my head. And while I think it should be like kids media, I think should always be unafraid to be a little bit scary sometimes. Jim Henson himself said that, it's not the worst thing in the world for a kid to feel like a little bit of fear when they're younger, and I fully believe that. I think it is a lot of information to expect a child or even like somebody younger to retain. And I'm 30, and I had even then, if you ask me to name anything that isn't Fizzgig, I'm gonna have a hard time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no worries at all because I've got notes and IMDb open, and
Let's
that's
do
the
it.
extent of what I do.
We're already ahead of most movie podcasts just with those 2 tabs. Yeah.
Boom, perfect. Let's
Mhm.
see.
Yeah. Oh,
Checking
you
in
did a small cursory amount of research?
Mm-hmm.
a tiny bit.
Mm-hmm.
It was hard. No, it wasn't. But checking in with chat, we've got some 5s. We've got a 2 out of 5 because the movie scared the fuck out of me. A lot of people are like, "How? What?" Let's see. Congrats, Vanessa on GG. There's 4 out of 5, 2 out of 5, 4 out of 5. So, all right, cool. Now that we're caught up and we know who we are, let's start. So the premise, according to IMDb, says on another planet in the distant past, a Gelfling embarks on a quest to find the missing shard of a magic crystal and to restore order to his world. And that is probably the vaguest I've ever heard this movie explained.
Yeah.
Ever. That actually makes me really upset.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't matter. So the premise of this is there's a giant crystal and it cracks, and then 2 different species of beings happen. One is extremely hostile, the other one is a little more passive, so absolute opposites of each other. The what are they called again? The Skeksis.
Yep.
The Skeksis.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So they are probably the scariest things I've ever seen. And I feel like I've seen this movie before, and my subconscious just decided to bury it and put a giant lock on it. But
I've twice seen a Skeksis in person, and they're terrifying.
No.
One at the Jim Henson exhibit, and then the other one at Henson Studios. I've seen them in person twice, and looking them in the eyes is the most haunting thing because there's so much life in it, and it's just a puppet.
Yeah.
That's no thank you. No thank yous. That just sounds terrifying, and I would actually like to go to Henson Studio and check it out. But so they took over the tower, is what I call it. And they watch the crystal. They use creatures or different species beings to take their essence and to basically dry them out, to just regenerate them, keep them young. But it's 1,000 years since the crack, and there is a prophecy that says, hey, this little dude, what the Gelfling, their Gelflings are going to take out this Skeksis, basically. So long story short, they eradicate an entire race. There are 2 survivors. They think they're the prophecy. One finds the crystal. They meet each other, fall in love, because that's just how it goes in the movies, I guess. And long story short, they do save the day. They combine the crystal. The nice dudes and the mean dudes, so the Skeksis and the Mystics combined, being the entity that I feel like is, what did I word them? I explained something and it just sounded really, really weird. Okay, so it looks like Dilbert from Treasure Planet after he's been electrocuted, and that's the comparison that I had for the entity, the final beings, So story alone, how did we feel about it? Because you, as Vanessa and Kassem, as both of you have mentioned, it is a very dense plot. It's a very dense universe. So how do we feel about just this film in general? Like, did we feel like it was a little intense, a little overwhelming? Was there not enough information? Was there too much information? Who would like to go first?
I'll hop on in. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead, Vanessa, please.
I think story-wise, it's a very simple story. It's a very, good and evil story. I think the idea of like good and evil being connected was a really interesting story point that I enjoyed, and on its own is easy enough to follow. I think a lot of like the history and like the like character race elements of it and how they exist amongst each other is what made it a little bit more of like a to do to wrap your head around. But I think in terms of like what point it is trying to make, in that there's always one thing can't exist without the other, and there's like a balance that needs to be struck, is a very like tale as old as time kind of story. I think because the puppets are so expressive, you don't initially realize that the dialogue is kind of the entire way through, because these puppets are so magnificent, but they don't really have like that much to work with dialogue wise. But story wise, just a very simple tale of good and evil and a balance must be struck kind of story.
All right. Okay. Cool. Cool. Kassem.
Yeah, I really I want to echo a lot of what Vanessa said. I like the idea of their having like the duality, of like whatever those sort of like electrocuted Mr. Burnsy mystic things were versus the Skeksis, those being the sort of the angel and the devil, and then you've got the those like sort of lizardy guys that to me look like Jeff Daniels in the face. But like
they do
look like Jeff Daniels. There was a lot of stuff that just flew over my head. Now I've seen this movie, I think 3 times total. There's some stuff on today's watch where I was just like, oh yeah, okay, all right. I didn't really pay attention to that. I didn't really understand sort of what the role of the sort of like the big lady with the one eye with the planetary the sort like she's sort of like she's been around for over 1,000 years, so so there was a lot of like story plots where I was, oh okay, they really took their time and they fleshed a lot of this story out. At its core, there's like this kid who's the last, he thinks he's the last remaining member of his species, and he meets another one, and all while trying to take over or dismantle what these like evil little vulture guys have been doing, which is trying to amass total power. And they've completely wiped out a species. I mean, there's been a genocide at the hands of these things. So there's like a lot of really big themes that I think are mostly there. I think what happens when people watch this movie is that they get so impressed with like the effort and the puppetry and what's happening in terms of like the world, that like I think we overlook exactly what Vanessa was saying, is that some of the dialogue is like, oh okay, like maybe they were more worried about like the blocking in this scene than they were about like what they were actually saying.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of, but the movie is so impressive that I would still consider it a 4 popcorn movie because of everything else that went along with it. I still really enjoy it. And by the way, if you agree with us on any level that this movie seems kind of there's like a maybe too much, the Netflix series is much more dense than the movie is.
Oh wow.
Much more. And there's like imagine just like 10 times the amount of people, all the lore times 10. It's to the point where like I couldn't tell you. I watched most of it. I can't even really tell you what happened. I honestly have no idea. But they did try, and they made a show, and the effort is there.
They made a show.
They made a show.
They made a show. Yeah.
A for effort.
Yeah.
Bill, what did you think about the story?
I really always remember loving the story, and I still do. It's interesting, what Vanessa, you commented on and such, is you have to, is thinking about who that original audience was for the movie, right? It was a kids targeted film. And I wonder what about the choices in dialogue, because you do have a relatively complex story, as far as like all the mythology, even though it really is a here's a quest, go do a thing, fix a thing, yay. Kids aren't really getting into the notion of, that the creatures that caused it, they were both unified, split the crystals because of hubris and all that. They're not going to get that. So I wonder if some of the dialogue they were trying to keep it kind of easier. This is also very much during the dark, and by dark I mean the more kind of scary or sinister times, both for Disney and for films for kids in general, because you're talking Watcher in the Woods, Watership Down, Secret of Nim, Something Wicked This Way Comes, all of those sorts of films that traditionally, like for kids fare, would have been like way outside of the pale. And so I enjoyed that it had that kind of like teeth to it, sort of a thing. And as a kid, loved it, as far as got right into the notion of, just as much as can love a Muppets movie, it worked here as well, because they weren't really distracting. They were their characters and come along. I mean, as a kid watching this thing and watching a Skeksis basically suck the brains out of a pod person was the most horrific thing ever. Now, why no one has ever done one of those squishy toys but done it in reverse with a drink that when you drink it, it sucks them in, they haven't done that, is a marketing miss that all these companies have sadly lost.
That's genius and terrifying. Watching a Gelfling cave in is one of the most terrifying things I've ever seen, and I watch like several horror movies a day. I love kids horror. I really do. I miss when kids media was allowed to be scary.
Yeah.
There is some like pretty, and I remember liking that this movie was so dark, and I didn't remember, but when I was watching it today, a Skeksis like stabs that Gelfling gal, whatever, I forget her name. I think it's
Kira.
She gets stabbed.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, it's a choice. It's a choice.
She has to be revived.
Having the life force sucked out of you is a choice. Like poor podlings, it's like, these are big choices. This is what I like about the movie. I really enjoyed that part of it.
I'm not going to take any credit for what I'm about to say, but I interviewed John Dilworth, who was the creator of Courage the Cowardly Dog, which is a very like scary piece of kids media. And he described some of the earliest times when you're like afraid watching a movie or a TV show when you're a child as a very beautiful piece of what he called bourgeoisie horror, meaning it was a time in your life in which you could be scary, but it's such a lovely luxury in that the fear is nothing that's actually going to hurt you. It's the first time in your life that you realize that you can be afraid in the way that you could be like startled and it's a treat because somebody popped out of a corner and scared you and you get to laugh afterwards. Or you're like, ha ha ha, I'm afraid, but I'm safe in my home. And I think that's such a great way to describe that sensation. The first time you realize it when you're a kid, that you see something scary, but you're ultimately okay at the end afterwards. Because I mean, what are the two biggest emotions that we feel coming into life? We scream and then we laugh.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And it's funny, Bill, that you were mentioning all those other films, because I do remember watching those, being absolutely terrified, and yet it's always back on my playlist, on my watch list. So it's very, very bravo. I feel like you put it on the pin. And then just shout out to SC Pyro for raiding. Thanks for the raid, buddy.
Thank you, Pyro.
Yay.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Yeah, we've got a lot of familiar faces from, like just watching Kassem's streams and seeing the comment people and the people that are checking in from the G4 era. So that's awesome. Hi. Hello.
Yeah. Shout out to the Cream Team.
Cream Team. So, okay, let's get into the effects. Like, let's talk about the puppets, because I feel like, one, you can't talk about Jim Henson anything without talking about the puppets. You can't talk about the puppeteers. You can't talk about the voice actors without, like they're necessities. So I would say, like, shout out to Frank Oz, this was his first directorial debut. He is the voice and puppeteer of like Grover, Fozzie Bear, Miss Piggy, like that time.
Sam Eagle.
Oh, so many. So like let's talk about these puppets. What, like, did you have a favorite? I mean, like Vanessa, you kind of mentioned the Fizz gig Furball already, but like, what do you want to say about these puppets? Because they're just absolutely phenomenal. And I was listening to another podcast about it, saying that they had like filters over the cameras during the process, so you didn't actually get to see like the fine detail that was put into each and every one of these puppets.
You know, having actually like seen a couple of them in person, they really are like so much more detailed than they look to be on screen, which I think really like speaks to the amount of effort that went into them in the first place. I think this is such a testament as to why like good voice actors and good puppeteers are like a cherished lost art. I feel like now, especially now, you see celebrities cast as voice actors when they don't really know. There's, you know, voicing a character and then there's being a voice actor. And if you've ever watched a Muppet thing or an animated thing, especially from like the early 80s and 90s, in which that was like an art, you can kind of see the difference. I was lucky enough that at the Jim Henson exhibit, they had like actual puppeteers running around with like their own puppets. Like these weren't like Henson puppets, but these were like indie puppeteers. And one of them was so good at being a puppeteer that there's an entire guy coming out of this broccoli, but I was talking to the broccoli like it was a living, breathing piece of broccoli. And there's so much of that in this. You lose the puppeteers and you lose the voice actors, because oftentimes, you know, Jim Henson could be like Jim Henson puppeted Jen, but he didn't voice Jen. And it takes a team to make each one of these things come alive. But when they're alive, you only see the characters.
Yeah.
I think, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Bill, please.
You know, I was doing press junkets a couple of years ago when the last Muppet Show was doing the round, and it's interesting how people interact with Muppets. And because, you know, watching people going into the room for doing the interviews, and Kermit was doing interviews, and you can clearly see there's a dude sitting right there with the hand up and the sticks and everything and doing it. However, people will go in and just burst into tears because they're talking to Kermit, you know, right off the bat. And it engages with them on such a visceral level that these are creatures, and adults lock into it in a hot second. And I think that's a certain magic that especially Muppet presentation does. It's really kind of like Vanessa pointed out, it's an art.
Absolutely. I think when I rewatched when I watched the Netflix series that came out, I think 2 years ago now, every puppet is essentially the same as it was in 1982. I mean, there are some minor updates, but it just goes to show you that like they absolutely nailed it that first go around, and so much so that it like added to the look and feel in such a big way that it to do it differently or to do it CGI would completely change the tone and the feel and the atmosphere of what they were trying to go after. And so besides like a couple very minor changes that they had in the Netflix series, everything was the same as it was in 1982. And it's a shame that the show won't see a second season. I can imagine that maybe the viewership wasn't as high as it needed to be in order to like justify the cost. It's part of the reason why it's probably all the reason why we don't see this stuff now, is because how it's such a specified skill that these people have, and it's not cheap. But when it's done right, it looks so good, and it's going to give you an experience that like nothing else really will. I'm such a fan of how I might enjoy the making of and like the behind the scenes and seeing how like these elevated platforms with like the puppeteers underneath. I may enjoy that more than a lot of the stuff that the actual like product that they make. I thought it was an unbelievable, like I don't know where in Jim Henson's career he was. Like I feel like he was definitely like he was well known, and I don't know like where it was in his sort of trajectory, but he seems to be using a lot of the skills that he learned in previous projects, and he executes them all sort of like on this, in this movie, and henceforth like his family does, and his team does on the Netflix series. It's like it's the reason why this is a 4 popcorn movie for me, is the sheer the brilliance in the engineering, the skill and the mastery of the puppeteering, and the voice acting. To me, it's like I don't know how I would ever go about making one of these. If somebody was like, how do you make an Avengers Endgame? I could be like, well, we just need a green screen and guys that are really good on the computer. I can probably get you something. But like, if somebody was like, you have to make the Dark Crystal, I don't think, given like 10 years, I could give you anything remotely close to what this movie is.
It feels like actual magic on Earth.
Yeah.
Like really good puppetry, especially the kind of puppetry that Jim Henson was pulling off, and like everything that comes out of Henson Studios is truly the closest thing we can get to like actual magic on Earth.
Yeah. It's fantastic. There's a whole like the whole podling scene, where they're just kind of like having fun, and like it just felt like a real world. It had this sort of like Fraggle Rock vibe to it, and it's just so fun. I like every time I watch it, I'm just watching a different part of the scene because there's something happening in every square inch of it. It's really fun.
Yeah. So, Steph.
Oh,
what?
Yes.
Speaking of, huh?
Yeah, something like that. Yay, Fraggles. Though I always love doozers, but he gets nervous on camera.
Look at my face. Puppets do this to my face every time.
No.
Hi. Hello. Am I on camera? Am I on camera?
You're on camera. You're on Twitch.
Steph, what I'll ask to you is the reason that I was between 3, 5, and 4 is when thinking about reviewing a film, it depends. People walk up and go, "Oh, would I like this film?" Well, I don't know. What kind of movies do you like? Right? I think a kid coming in and seeing this film, it's a brilliant 4.5 film. It'll give them, it's magical, it's mythical, it's drama, and they can connect with it. And like Vanessa and Casper mentioned, it still feels safe in the end. But if it's an adult going to see it for the first time, you said you gave it, what did you give it? A 3, 3.5?
Me?
Yeah, you.
Yeah, a 3.
3. So you coming in as an adult, what was your take on it? Because that's where my caveat is, as a modern viewer seeing it for the first time as an adult, what's your takeaway from it?
Oh, that's a good question. What I took away from it, I think I even wrote it. No, there was a note. There was a note in there that if I throw a tantrum and I'm a cute little furball, I can get anything that I want. So I just need to grow a couple more inches of hair on my body and we'll be solid. But in all realness, watching it from the 33-year-old 2022 adult, what I took away from it is there's so much more that I probably missed the first couple of times I've watched it, because I had to watch it twice for the sake of tonight. I definitely feel like there are a lot of things that I've missed. I feel like, as terrified as I am thinking about watching the Netflix series, I will probably dig into that just out of sheer curiosity, because I did enjoy like a lot of movies that the Jim Henson Co. created or were a part of. Like, I love the Muppets, I love the Labyrinth, and for some reason watching this one was a little more traumatizing. I would say, out of all the other Henson films that I've seen before. But yeah, I would say, like, taking away from watching it for the first time, I feel like I want to appreciate the movie because it did leave such a legacy, and there are so many people that are obsessed with this film. I would like to put a little more work into my research so that I don't give it a 3, and I could feel more comfortable giving it a 4 or a 5. So yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. How do you feel about puppets, Bill?
Dude, I'll still say my favorite version of all of the versions of the Christmas Carol is still Muppets Christmas Carol. It's still the best with some of the scariest versions of the
It's the
ghosts.
absolute best one.
You know, because
It's the absolute best one.
because it still shows you can have the regular Muppets, but it can still be a drama. It can have some lighthearted moments, but it still can speak to heavier topics. And the early point with the Henson's company really brought all of their tricks in when it came to Dark Crystal. And so I think it's unfortunate that we didn't get more of those, especially before he passed.
Yeah.
But still, the company still carries forward the legacy. And so I think right now, with it's an interesting thing talking about fantasy series and how do you get things complex, because we see a lot of things online about how people want all the backstory about all the characters. So what is Snope or Snape or whatever the heck the guy's name was from Star Wars films, and or is it okay to do a high level brush view of kind of like, look, there was a world, crystal broke, now there's a thing, go. Is that enough to keep people happy? And I think that's where audiences sometimes need to appreciate it when they get it both ways. Sometimes you don't get all the answers, and that's okay too, because then you can leave the theater and paint the rest of the scenes in your head and create the rest of the world as things go. It doesn't need to all be given.
Yeah, that's absolutely, yes, that's absolutely true.
By the way, in the credits, they're rolling right now. Fizzgig is credited fourth. I mean, that's what a character.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Well, he carries the movie on his back.
Many people, myself included, absolutely use the term, throwing a fizz gig. If someone's just going to rant or something, go back and with lots of teeth. Yeah, it's fizz gigging, and that's the Muppet I've always really wanted. Is I want a scooter and I want a fizz gig.
Do you collect Muppets and puppets, or is it just
I only have two. That one was done
Okay.
as actually. It's done as a replica of me from before I had a white beard, brown. I have a matching Hawaiian shirt, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
Just a Kermit and then a Wembley. But wow, there's three. So I don't really collect them, no. But if I had the chance, I'd totally get a scooter.
Yeah. To me, it's like, I feel like if I had one of those that I walked in and it was in my office every day, it would change my mood because of all the feelings I have attached to it. Now I'm going to have to go and see how much these things cost.
We can find you a Kassem puppet.
Absolutely. Yeah. We know some puppeteers.
Well, I don't want to ruin my morning when I walk into my office, but I would like a recognizable. I wouldn't mind a Fraggle Rock. I wouldn't mind a Podling. A Fizzgig would be nice.
A couple of doozers up on the wall, kind of building stuff.
Totally. Yes. Give me a couple doozers.
I think for me, it would be Animal or Grover.
Yes.
Dude, an Animal Fizzgig combo, that's chaos. That is pure chaos.
The thought
that is my North Star.
Yeah. The fun thought experiment is always kind of like, pick your favorite movies. What would you do to convert it to a Muppet movie, and which human character would you keep?
Like
I have that answer for a show.
Yeah.
Brooklyn Nine-Nine, except Andre Bauer, who plays Captain Holt, is the only human.
That would be
Boogie Nights.
Oh my god!
And the only human is, of course, it would have to be Dirk Diggler, because he would have to get it on with every other Muppet.
Yeah, he'd be piloting them with the lower, because then and then you wear him like a Muppet. In that case. Is Cry in the Dark the one where the dingo ate the baby? And the dingo is the only non-Muppet.
Beautiful. Absolutely. Now that's a horror movie.
That sounds terrifying. Let's see. Somebody said Muppet Dread or The Office, but don't change Michael Scott.
Mm-hmm.
I like that one. Ooh, I've seen.
Dredd. I would just figure it's going to be Eagle as Dredd with the helmet on. He just kind of has the scowl already.
That would be perfect. That would be perfect. I just want to see like a cooking movie with the Swiss chef. I just want a show of the Swiss chef making food.
Yeah,
that's it. That's all.
Switch out any episode of No Reservations and take out Bourdain and put in Swedish Chef.
Absolutely. Oh, that's a 10-season Netflix series right there.
And here they are at El Bui or Elenia's, and
For some reason in my head, I'm thinking about Saving Private Ryan. They're all still human. Everyone's still human until the very end where Matt Damon transforms into the old man, but the old man is a puppet.
No. or G-Men 3D says, or in Jon Favreau's Chef.
Yeah.
Julie and Julia, but only keeping Amy Adams, says Heartless 7. Eat Bork Love.
Yeah.
That's
Ooh, John Wick, but only John Wick is the non-puppet.
Yeah, and Kai Cora just said Matrix, but only Neo is human.
Right. Just think of all the stuffing that's puffing around as they shoot heads in John Wick movie.
No need to censor. It's just stuffing. It's just stuffing. I did want to bring up that I forgot where I read it, but I believe 6 people had to man one Skeksis.
Sexy.
Yeah, they were huge. They were huge.
Yeah.
If you want to see one in person and also gain access to the Henson lot, not the, but a Henson lot, there's a show in Los Angeles that I cannot recommend enough. Like, I will take you if you ever want to go. I mean it. It's called Puppet Up. It's run by Brian Henson Studios, and it's an entirely improvised show run by puppeteers and puppets that go entirely based on audience suggestion, but it's like as good as a Muppet production. And then there's a camera on them so you can see like exactly the puppet show, and then you can see the puppeteers as well. And they improvised a song about me. And I don't think at 30 years old, I don't think I'd ever felt the feeling that I felt when you're like a child and like you're at a theme park and your parents like give someone your name so that you think that magic is real. So then ET goes like, "Hi, Vanessa," or whatever. It was maybe the coolest thing I've ever experienced. And you get to walk around the lot first, and they have a Skeksis on the premises.
That's incredible.
Yeah, and someone mentioned in the chat, let me see if I can scroll enough to find it. G-Men 3D. One of the Skeksis is on display at the Academy Museum and is absolutely gorgeous.
It is. Okay, in that case, I've seen it 3 times in my life.
You know, if anyone's, there's also a cosplayer, Ryan Wells, who
I'm watching this.
I put the link there in Zoom chat. He did a full-size Skeksis costume, and that's part of that work is what he's now working in industry with that stuff. So
this is a one man.
It's one person.
Okay, that's very impressive,
and it's huge.
Wow.
Wow.
He also did one of the bugs. He did a couple of the others, but his specialty is very large cosplays, and But it's like this goes back to bringing it back to talking about Dark Crystal is like the amount of how this kind of embeds itself into the psyche as being part of puppets being something that we can still connect with, even though we can clearly see strings, chords, things, this is not real, but everyone from children to adults are so willing to set it aside and go, I'm into this and accept the fantasy.
Yeah.
That's part of the reason why I think that when androids they get close enough, we are not going to have any problem making them our girlfriends.
I will never take a human lover ever again.
It's going to be so easy for me.
I will never take a human lover ever again.
Exactly.
I will me and an android until I'm dead and it powers down.
All I need is just a blink. It doesn't need to look real. It just needs to blink, and then that's pretty much. It's exactly to your point. Is I can suspend that disbelief just as if I was a kid looking at I was at Disneyland or something looking at an attraction. This is a very impressive cosplay. I have to imagine that so you said this guy now works in.
It works in the industry. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That makes sense. I always like to look at a cosplay and go like, can I make that? And then the answer is no to this, but it's very impressive. And I'm glad people are doing this. I would have to imagine that I'm pretty sure there is a big cult following for the Dark Crystal, right? Do they have their own convention? Do they have their own yearly get together?
They used to, however, now it's more like on anniversaries. kind of a
Okay.
thing. It's like a lot of things where it's kind of like, yeah, there's a dedicated following, but it's somewhat niche. And so it's like it works
Yeah.
better if it's like, or they have one in the UK and they have one in US based every couple of years, that kind of stuff.
Oh gosh. That's I should go shoot a video wherever that is, but this is really fun. This is really fun. I really enjoy a small but passionate community that rallies around anything.
Yeah, I do want to add one more thing, because it's almost 9 o'clock, and that's insane. And now I know why people stream for like hours upon hours. But I won't do that to you. I won't do that. I did want to mention that upon Googling, I did see that a lot of the landscape that they used was art. It was painted artwork that they used as like background instead of physical backgrounds. Not all of them necessarily, but there were a couple of them of just like huge, vast landscapes that was painted and not an actual location. And I just found that absolutely fascinating
Mhm.
how far they can go artistically, and like to not have to, blow a giant Hollywood budget, not blow a giant, no, use a big Hollywood budget, just use your resources. Like, we've got artists, let's go. We've got puppeteers, let's go. Like, basically everybody who was part of Muppets was a part of this. And I just find that absolutely beautiful how they really did, it seemed to like grab brilliant talent and just squeeze every fiber of their just being to create magic. Hollywood magic.
Painted backgrounds are such a magnificent lost art. The Academy
Yes.
Museum actually has an incredible piece. It is the Mount Rushmore background from North by Northwest, and it is
Mm.
absolutely massive. It is huge. However big you're thinking, like 4 times bigger than that. In terms of just like how big that background is, that you can actually like look at it for realsies.
Mm.
There have been different people that make it their jobs to collect old backgrounds, because a lot of these, they just don't get saved. They get thrown away, and then they end up in like either like landfills or old storage units, where somebody doesn't know that they've had like an actual treasure buried there for
Yeah.
quite some time. Um, some of my favorite like ending movie scenes have just been like magnificent backgrounds. Like a great sci-fi movie called A Quiet Earth ends with a beautiful painted background, or a wonderful horror movie called The Beyond. I miss the era of painted backgrounds, because while like CG is wonderful and it's an art in its own right, I very much miss that beautiful, tangible, dreamlike look of a
Right.
painted background.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also so much of them, on glass and everything makes them so fragile and so easy to get damaged over the years.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So final question before we close out. Seeing it recently and seeing it before, some of us, not all of us, would you recommend this movie to a friend? And how would you sell it to them? Who would like to go first?
Okay. Because
You cleared your throat, it's you.
yeah. I don't want to, I want to give space, but also don't want to leave too much dead air. I would recommend this movie to someone who was into fantasy, that maybe this movie kind of slipped under the radar. I don't know if somebody wasn't kind of sort of orbiting this like fantasy sci-fi, like that whole, I don't know if I would recommend that, because it's a very specific flavor, and so if they said something like, if they said I really enjoyed Labyrinth, they've probably already seen this movie, right? But if they say something like like, oh, I miss practical effects in movies, like I would probably recommend this as a practical sort of like, oh, this is a very hands-on, you get your mitts all over this thing, go watch The Dark Crystal. If it's like somebody like my brother, who's like really into like big blockbusters and things like that, I don't know if this is going to be a recommendation, because they might come away with, if you're not into the spectacle of how what you're looking at and the puppetry and Jim Henson and cool fantasy and 80s, you're not, I don't know if you're going to enjoy it as much as we did watching it as kids, or at least me and Bill.
Okay. Belle?
So anyone young adult and younger, absolutely easy sell. Go watch it. You'll love it. Have a good time. Adults, just kind of framing it up in that it's a high fantasy Muppets set world. And it's better than The Hobbit, might not be as good as The Lord of the Rings. Tell me what you think. And if nothing else, that'll give me go at least watch it, and then they'll come and fetch at me later.
Okay. Vanessa, how about you?
I want to recommend this to teenagers so bad because I feel like they've been fed a diet of CG since the day that they were born. So I really want to see what an entirely like practical feat of like art does to their brains.
Yeah.
And I think it would be something that a lot of them might end up enjoying. Because I feel like it's the right combination of like scary and lore driven that like a teenager would definitely have a lot of fun with. But similarly to like showing my preteen niece a VHS and explaining to her that a movie is in the box, I want to see a teenager watch The Dark Crystal now.
Great. Awesome. Awesome. Well, that is all the time that we have to talk about Jim Henson and the Dark Crystal. I almost called it the Muppet Crystal. That would be one heck of a show. Thank you to all the viewers that are
do.
And right, it's gonna get crazy now. But shout out to my guests, Bill, Kassem, Vanessa. Thank you guys so much for being here.
Thanks for having us.
And I feel so special, like I got your time. So I would love to open the platform and let you guys say, like, you know, where can people find you? What are some exciting things that are going on in your lives that you want people to tune into? Vanessa, we could start with you.
I've got some exciting things coming down the pipeline that I can't quite announce yet, but please keep a lookout for my Twitter, which is NESS Guerrero, my Hive, which is NES Guerrero, and my Instagram, which is SNES Guerrero. No, I couldn't get the same name across all three of them. For more information on that, I'm producing over at Game Grumps, and while you won't immediately see the fruits of my labor, those are also coming down the pipeline. And then twitch.tv/NES Guerrero for Twitch streams, which I will be doing in a higher frequency soon. Yeah, that's it.
Yay! Kassem?
Yep, I'm on Twitch most of the week, and yeah, you can find. I have a podcast called Pajama Fans Podcast, and that's it. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. I'm there as well. Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, of course. Join the cream team.
And join the cream team. Oh yeah, the Discord, the cream.team. Thank you.
Boom.
I'm terrible at self-promotion. Thank you.
I got you. That's what we're here for. We're here to lift each other up, you know? Bill?
You can find me on most places as Bill RW and the number 3, mostly doing written stuff these days for nerdbot.com. And if I get off my butt, I'll finally start doing some videos. But, you know, I keep leaving it to you professionals.
Pish posh. Whatever. Well, I'm always happy to have you guys on at any point. Heartless just redeemed Hydrate. I can't believe it took an hour for somebody to tell us we need to hydrate. So grab your drinks, get a sip on. Bing, bam, boom. Cheers, Heartless.
There's a helicopter finally disappearing as of 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, Vanessa's safe.
For now.
I'm not letting go of that big stick.
You can follow me on Nom Talk Network. I'm always the one behind the scenes doing all the things and preparing us for our next stream, which is tomorrow. We are going to do a double feature of the 15-year-old Enchanted and the fresh spanking brand new Disenchanted. Other than that, you can follow us on all our platforms: Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. I've lost track. You can listen to this in a podcast form on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcast. Until next time, thank you so much. My name is Stephanie. Thank you to Bill and Vanessa and Kassem. Once again, thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you guys for being here on the live show and just being part of the conversation. I saw everybody's comments. You guys are amazing. And until next time, have a nomerific day. Bye.